That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Twisters, the sixth film directed by Lee Isaac Chung, which is being released courtesy of Universal on July 19th, 2024.
Do I know a Lee Isaac Chung film?
I don't believe so, but you should. His last feature was the Oscar-winning Minari, which I recommend you do see eventually. I also was a fan of his 2012 indie feature, Abigail Harm, starring the great Amanda Plummer.
What is Twisters about? A retired tornado chaser and meteorologist is persuaded to return to Oklahoma to work with a new team and new technologies. What is your pull quote?
It's Mad Max meets the local weather station in this silly and ultimately bland disaster film dissipating into a milquetoast romance between one-dimensional characters.
Mine. Like its namesake, Twisters is a bloated, chaotic mess. I did not enjoy this movie.
I did not either. I would not enjoy it on a plane or in the rain. I mean, clearly it's a spiritual follow-up to the hit 1996 film Twister, starring Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton and Jamie Gertz, and which was directed by Jan de Bont. And of course, that screenplay was written by Michael Crichton and Anne-Marie Martin.
When I think about like natural disaster films, I feel like I enjoy two types. There's the type like Crawl, that Alexander Aja film about a hurricane and a dad and daughter getting stuck in the basement with a big ass crocodile. That felt very tense and claustrophobic in the middle of like this grand natural disaster. Or then even something like the original Twister, which is ridiculous, but it's simple and fun in a way. But this film, there's so much going on that I don't think even makes sense.
No, and then it's like borrowing from the beats of the 96 film, which I guess is to like even with a stop off to the main lead's mother's house, which I don't think is really neat. I don't know, it just feels it. You know what kind of natural disaster films I enjoy? Interesting ones, and this is not one of those.
If I wasn't rolling my eyes, I was checking the time or giggling at ridiculous things. But the story. So Daisy Edgar-Jones.
Daisy Edgar-Jones from Where the Crawdads Sing and Fresh.
I like the actor.
She's fine.
I think she's cute.
This character is
annoying.
An annoying, pious, boring person.
So God, it's so hard to tell stories like this because there's so much going on. She works at the Weather Channel. But we see that 5 years prior, she was working on her PhD, and she was trying to do some research where she believed that if she was able to like shoot polymers into a tornado, it might help them dissipate. So 5 years prior, she, with 4 other people, are on a mission to chase a tornado, to shoot these barrels into the tornado, along with these little pods, which is a callback to the first movie, because...
And the Dorothy 2 or whatever.
Because they're called Dorothy 2, these little pods. So they're shooting the pods into the tornado to track the tornado's movement, but then they're shooting the polymer in to calm it down. But in the process of doing that, things go left. And 3 of her friends, the people who she's working with, are killed.
Including her boyfriend, Jeb, played by Daryl McCormack, who you should recognize from that Emma Thompson film where he was the sex worker. Good luck to you, Leo Grand.
You know, I thought I recognized him because he reminds me of the Australian gay actor who was on Drag Race as a judge, who had like X photos leaked of him. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yes, from Love, Simon.
Yes, I thought that was him.
Mine went to Dustin Lance Black, but he's not Australian. The supporting cast. There's a whole bunch of up and coming, recognizable faces.
Anyway, the one member of the team who didn't die is Anthony Ramos. And we see now 5 years later, she's working at the Weather Channel, and Anthony Ramos just pops up. And he's like, hey girl, I haven't talked to you in a long time. Went to go see your mom. She says she hasn't talked to you. But anyway, this is what I've been doing. I've been working for the government. They created this like top secret technology that can do like 3D images of like weather events. And they made mobile versions. And I took a few and started my own company. And what I want to do is triangulate these 3D images, or triangulate these images so I can create a 3D image of a tornado in motion. And it's never explained how, but that information could help save people. It's so basic and vague. And she says, no, I'm good. And then we cut to him sending her. She literally walks out on his ass. Like they're at a coffee shop and she just says no and walks out. And then we cut to him sending her like a link to a video of another tornado hitting Oklahoma and killing a bunch of people.
They're killing our people.
And she decides to help. So now she's taken, I guess, a week off from work because that's all she can spare, or that's all he needs from her, to go down to Oklahoma, where she's from, and we're in Tornado Alley, and we're told that during this 1 week period, thankfully, we're going to have a once-in-a-generation tornado system. So, of course, all these assholes who are tornado chasers, like novices, show up. So they have to contend with that. But their goal, and the name of Anthony Ramos's company, it's like a startup tech company, is called like Stormpar. And all they want to do is get her to tell them, like, because I hated the fact that you said something funny, that she's like a water witch.
Yep.
Because they're basically like, she has this natural instinct to like track tornadoes. And I'm like, watch this lady go like this. And she does one better. She goes and grabs a dandelion and the little seeds fly out. And that's how she knows where the tornado's going. But they just need her to tell them where the tornado's going so they can drop off these 3 mobile image machines.
It's like, I thought of Aliens a couple times actually in this, because there's this disaster and the people die and she's called back as the expert, and Jeanette Goldstein saying like, I only need to know one thing, where they are. And that is exactly what Daisy Edgar-Jones is doing for them.
So where does Glen Powell come into play? Glen Powell is in the movie as a famous YouTuber,
Tyler,
who looks like Glen Powell, who his channel is called Tornado Wranglers. They sell t-shirts like the ones we're wearing today. And he chases tornadoes and shoots fireworks into them. And he's famous on YouTube. So he's also at this once-in-a-generation tornado system week, Shark Week type event. And he instantly is taken by Daisy Edgar-Jones. Which I like her and I think she's cute, but I just found it odd that a man who looks like Glen Powell and who is famous is like, he stops in his tracks.
Yes.
And follows her and can't stop following her.
Yes, the men all pause in this film, and I don't understand why. There's also,
shout out to Climax.
There's also this very dull British journalist that's trailing Tyler. He's kind of like the Jamie Gertz character that is so uncomfortable but stuck along for the ride so we can feed them exposition about storms. Who makes a comment about her saying like, she's so intriguing. And my first note was, question mark, is she?
Yeah,
What?
I wrote that down too.
What is intriguing about her?
Again, this Daisy Edgar-Jones I think's cute. I like her. I liked her in Where the Crawdads Sing. I know people didn't, but I just don't get her intrigue in this movie.
I don't at all.
But anyway, to wrap this shit up, Glen Powell's smitten by her, so now he's kind of following her around. And initially, he's seen as like, I hated that his character and his ragtag group of like production people are so obnoxious.
Also a callback to where you had like Philip Seymour Hoffman and Todd Field in the background and a bunch of other people, but yeah.
But they end up, Glen Powell reveals to Daisy Edgar-Jones that Anthony Ramos is not a good guy because his startup was funded by this like cowboy real estate tycoon who's basically exploiting, quote unquote, the people who are affected by tornadoes, because after a town is demolished, he goes in and offers them money for their land.
It's like an ambulance chaser.
So Anthony Ramos is sort of like, that's part of his job, is when places get torn down, he goes in with his team and they offer them money, which we can talk about.
Yeah, because I think that's kind of unfair that he's villainized for that.
I didn't quite think that Anthony Ramos should have been villainized for that. But anyway, Daisy Edgar-Jones jumps ship from helping him to team up with Glen Powell because he discovers her early research through a really awkward scene with Daisy Edgar-Jones' mother, who's played by
Maura Tierney, who you just saw in the Iron Claw.
who, like you said, is a callback to the 90s film.
Lois Smith, yeah, Helen Hunt's mother in that film.
But in that film, it's funny because her mother is like a single lady living by herself with a full feast ready to go. Same thing in this movie, except in this movie, she's not as fun, or like the scene just felt awkward. But anyway, Glen Powell agrees to help her. And so, very predictable, they go out to find one last storm to see if it works, and it doesn't. So then they realize like, oh, we did this wrong. they go try again. And of course, the final scene of the movie is this terrible tornado that comes. And Daisy Edgar-Jones ends up driving into the storm to release her technology, and it works.
To release her seed, yeah.
And I guess the day is saved because they stopped one tornado.
Yes, as it's demolishing a theater, I believe playing Frankenstein, and stops, as you commented, right at the row where the notable faces in the film start.
Oh, I hated that. Okay, I have so many notes. The tone is all over the place because it's like a romance, not only between Glen Powell and Daisy Edgar-Jones, but it's clear that Anthony Ramos didn't you get that vibe?
He's
like,
her.
yeah, he has like googly eyes for her.
Well, he tells her at one point, it's like, at one time I would have done anything for you.
And I just thought that poor Anthony Ramos, they played his ass so hard in this movie because they have him in this movie looking like someone's drunk uncle, paired like up against Glen Powell. There's even a scene like at the end at the airport, or before she goes to the airport,
Right,
where it's Anthony Ramos standing next to Glen Powell, and it's kind of like she has to choose one. Mm-hmm. And like, of course, who's she going to choose? She has all this trauma associated with Anthony Ramos. She thinks he's a villain, and he kind of looks worse for wear in this movie. And then you have Glen Powell, who's like a literal cowboy hero. I just thought that was... If I read that script, I would have been like, y'all not putting me in this movie. I felt like that would be like you put me in a movie next to the Bridgerton guy. And then who you gonna pick? Not me. Like, I thought that was whack.
I don't quite agree with your sentiments at the end there, but yeah, sure.
I mean, maybe there's not the same range and discrepancy, but you know. But anyway, okay, so there's that. Then as a natural disaster film, it just didn't feel... There was only one scene where I thought, oh, like the tornado seems like it runs through like a power plant. The power plant catches on it. There's flames. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, I didn't think that I wasn't on the edge of my seat. It wasn't a thrill ride.
It feels like they backed off considerably from some subtext about pollution and global warming that would explain why this technology that somebody like Daisy Edgar-Jones is developing is all the more important to save our planet because we've destroyed it. But that goes nowhere.
I agree, because from like messaging standpoint, we focus on the fact that there's this real estate tycoon who's exploiting victims of tornadoes. So you want to go there, but then you don't want to touch on climate change. Mm-hmm. And I know people hate like woke whatever, but I feel like it's obvious that, because even Daisy Edgar-Jones' mom says, oh, I've noticed that the storms are coming more often. They're more unpredictable.
It's driving prices up.
And there's no commentary on like, well, weather patterns have changed because of this. Okay.
What's funny too is Michael Crichton, who co-wrote the original, I believe was staunchly opposed to the idea of global warming. I want to say.
Then, as a comedy, because most natural disaster films have a comedic element, that is not where it needs to be. I mean, I only wrote down one funny line. People were giggling throughout, but people also laugh at anything.
They do.
Then I thought that this movie could have worked well on like the Crawl, like Alexander Aja side of making it more of a horror type natural disaster film. Because there is one scene that I thought was what I wanted, which is Daisy Edgar-Jones ends up going to like a small town to just get away from all the drama. And like suddenly a tornado hits, which we need to talk about how all of these people, anyone who lives in Tornado Alley is made to seem so stupid in this movie. And then it's like you live in Tornado Alley and it's a once in a generation tornado cycle week and no one's prepared for anything.
No, there's no storm shelter.
Nothing. No one has a basement. There are no storm shelters. She's out staying at a motel and Glen Powell shows up because he misses her. And the tornado hits suddenly. No one's prepared. No one has a storm shelter. And they have to hide out in an empty pool. And several people get killed. And I thought that was the vibe the movie should have had. But outside of that, it just, like the action is just not where I wanted it to be.
I thought none of it was where, well, I'm not a huge fan of the first Twister, which I know a lot of people are, but it just seems like such a missed opportunity on every front.
There's a movie we reviewed last year called Supercell.
Which is not good.
Which we gave 1 star to, but it stars Anne Heche and Alec Baldwin.
It's like a Spielberg ripoff, yeah.
And that movie at least had more of the energy that I think this should have had, of like there's danger and they're running from the tornadoes and like there are more tense moments. I think the performances and the production value what gave it the low score. But the vibe and the intent, I think, had that been used in this film, which is already kind of there. It's just so bloated. This film did not need to be 2 hours.
I don't get it. And this one's written by Mark L. Smith, who's, I liked his, The Revenant, which he wrote, and Overlord, but he also wrote The Midnight Sky for George Clooney, which I really didn't like. But some of this dialogue is just trash. I mean, I think it's Glen Powell or his little assistant played by the co-star of Nope, Brendan Perea. It's one of them, I think, that's saying nobody knows what caused, they're talking to the journalist, what causes a tornado to form. It's part science, part religion. No, it is not part religion. It is.
Well, also that group, Glen Powell's group, are all very proud of the fact that they don't have educations. Like they're all self-taught tornado chasers. So, I mean, I guess that does make sense that he would say that.
And his crew is made up of, and I don't know if it's Lee Isaac Chung might not have had
full control
of who he could cast in this film, but it seems like the compensation is to have all these more interesting people of color or queer people in the background, because you have Sasha Lane and Katy O'Brien.
I didn't recognize Katy O'Brien, and even after you pointed her out to me, I still didn't recognize. I mean, I know who she is, but like she had nothing to do.
She had absolutely nothing.
Which is a shame, because if people don't know, her performance in Love Lies Bleeding is spectacular.
And Sasha Lane, who I highly recommend you see in American Honey, even though that was some time ago.
That's Lilly? Oh my God.
She had more
her looking like, if Lisa Bonet were a duck and on drugs. That's how this lady was acting.
Oh my God. Okay.
Oh, I hated that character.
Again, they give her more to do, but it's almost like, ooh, maybe you shouldn't have. And then poor Tunde Adebimpe.
Oh, they make him seem crazy, and he had good energy, but it's just like...
He's great. And I mean, if you've never listened to TV on the radio, you need to do yourself a favor. But even in other films like Rachel Getting Married or Nasty Baby, I think it's a delight to see him in. It was... Why?
And then you already mentioned him, but the guy from Nope, he's very pretty. So I feel like they cast him to pair with Glen Powell. Yeah. But it just looks so like... So these two like models are chasing storms. Okay, I need to get through this. The opening I thought was kind of a strong start, because that's when it's the 5 years prior and they're chasing a tornado, and that had the action I wanted. The first person to get killed though is one of the guys in the background, and early on. I think it's Daisy Edgar-Jones.
Praveen gets taken first.
She says, "Ever since you got struck by lightning, you're no fun." And I thought that was a funny line.
Oh no, it's Kiernan Shipka.
Oh yeah, who I also like. What do I know her from?
Totally Killer.
Yes, she's cute. But yeah, she tells him, "Ever since you got struck by lightning, you're no fun." And then he's the first one to get killed. But I thought the opening scene, it was interesting that it ends the way a lot of like French horror films end, where there's like the final girl walking away covered in blood, which is Daisy Edgar-Jones. So I was kind of excited.
Yeah, it is promising enough, a beginning. And then it's like, so she gave up on being a PhD candidate and goes to work.
Let's talk about that. That's my next note. So then she drops out of her PhD program. But then now, 5 years later, she has like what looks like a higher level job at the Weather Channel. Because she's the one that her superior is asking to make a call on whether to like send out a weather warning. Wouldn't you think that like there are so many people with PhDs who'd be clamoring for a job like that? Because in the first film, what's the lady's name? Helen Hunt? She has some notoriety.
Yeah.
But Daisy Edgar-Jones, her character, no one knows who that is. So how did she get this job?
I don't know.
I thought that was weird.
There's a lot.
Like, why did they have to say she didn't finish her PhD?
Well, yeah, why couldn't she have still done?
Why couldn't she have just had it?
She could have still carried her storm-related trauma with her.
When Anthony Ramos shows up, it was just like, not this. And he just looks so like, and then he tells her, "You have a gift." And I wrote down, what, stupidity? Like chasing tornadoes and then crying that you got hurt? I don't know. Then he offers her the gig. She takes it. And then he explains to her, like, I'm being funded by this like tycoon. And clearly his operation is legit. He has like great technology. He even calls out like, this is a huge upgrade from what we used to do, right? And then my first thought, is she getting paid?
No.
I hope she got paid for
well,
this.
I mean, it didn't seem like it, but she's volunteering.
Oh. the assistant to Anthony Ramos. I thought he looked like Henry Cavill.
Scott.
I found him interesting.
Corenswet. Well,
do you know him?
No, I don't. But he's kind of her nemesis.
I would, if there's another movie he's in, I'd check it out. I liked his energy. Okay, this triangulation scheme seems like a terrible idea. Like, I just think the technology of everything that's happening seems so dumb to me. Like, why, if they have these mobile imaging devices, why can't they have like robots or something semi-automatic go place them? Why do these people have to drive into the eye of a tornado to set up these cameras? Why couldn't they just place these cameras ahead of time, like how the damn National Geographic Channel sets up cameras to catch the elusive panther in action? You just wait for a tornado to pass.
Yep, and then when it's activated by
winds
A,
or
B,
something.
C, D, E, F, G, when the tornado passes over, then you can release the stuff you need.
Right? Like, am I crazy? Why did they have to drive into the eye of the storm? Why couldn't they just set up their cameras
and
and
imperil
wait?
their lives? Well, it's just so stupid how, again, a promising opening, but it's like, girl, you are driving with your friends and your lover into a tornado, and you are devastated that they got taken by the storm.
And they're all like confused why it's happening.
It's pretty clear why it happens.
Okay.
Yep.
The thing I hated the most is the Anthony Ramos and his Storm Par team, and then Glen Powell and his Tornado Wranglers team. We get 3 scenes where they're like racing each other to get to the tornado. That makes no sense. They are looking for different things. Glen Powell is on YouTube Live broadcasting the chase and how he's going to drive into the eye of the tornado. And then his truck has big screws that bolt him to the ground. And then when the tornado hits him, he shoots off fireworks. And then Anthony Ramos, they're not trying to drive into the tornado. They're trying to triangulate around it. Why would they be racing each other? They're not going to the same place. I hated that so much because it just felt like, oh, you're trying to give us like action and tension, but for a reason that does not make sense.
Because if I recall correctly from the first one, it's 2 different teams, one with more advanced setup, trying to get the same data.
That makes sense. Yeah. But in this movie, it does not make sense that they're racing each other to anything.
Especially as in that first scene where they do that, as Glen Powell cuts off Anthony Ramos to where they almost get into a car accident.
Like a very bad car accident. Okay, so then the first attempt, they do collect a little bit of data, but it fails essentially. And then Anthony Ramos says, we have to go find the one camera that kind of got blown away. And Daisy says, no, we have to go help the town. How? She does that 3 times. How are you going to go help? Like, what are you going to do? You don't have food, water for these people. There's this, at the end, she has to save Glen Powell, who gets like a big piece of like wood falls on him. And this little 100-pound lady can barely even pick it up. Like, she can't even pick it up. Mm-hmm. What is she going to do? She's not prepared to help anyone. I would love to know, like, people who've been affected by tornadoes, what they think about this depiction of like how all these townspeople just look so crazy. We get a scene where people are at a rodeo.
Well, people do need help. But
they need help, but not from her. They need emergency services to come with water and generators and food and medicine, not her walking around looking for someone's dog.
Like, no, she picks up a scrapbook and hands it to a woman. Here.
Yeah, that's all she does. Then the
rodeo.
The rodeo, there's a scene at like a softball park where these people are acting like it is not Shark Week. It is literally Shark Week in Tornado Alley. And then especially with the softball game, there is a huge storm developing within eyesight. And then finally you see one kid at like the dugout or at bat, look, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we gotta go. And then at the rodeo, the announcer is like, there's an inclement storm coming, the situation is very dire, move to the exit. Like, what?
But then even that seems so stupid because Daisy Edgar-Jones is enjoying herself with Glen Powell, who's rescued her with pizza out of her isolated hotel room. And then like a wind comes and a leaf blows at her feet and she picks up the leaf.
Because she's the water witch.
Didn't you measure storm cells in this area?
Okay. Glen Powell keeps calling her a city girl. Mm-hmm. But I don't know why he thinks she's a city girl because she talks with a twang. Yeah. Like, she seems like she's from the South. And then the accents from both of them go in and out.
Oh, well, she's British, technically.
So I thought the accent work was a little crunchy from both of them. But I think it's funny that there are times when she has a strong twang. Mm-hmm. And then she has to tell him, like, I'm from Oklahoma. I grew up on a farm. Like, I know all about tornadoes. And she tells him that at the rodeo because he thinks he's showing her something. Mm-hmm.
She may have grown up on a farm, but she didn't with an actress played by Maura Tierney. That's not a farm face.
Glen Powell also seemed more of like a city guy to me than she does.
Yes.
Okay, I have to say again that I just don't understand how we're in Tornado Alley and how many times, I think there are 4 different incidents where they're like, where's your basement? Where's your storm shelter? Oh, we don't have one. What?
Okay, guess you're gonna die.
Okay. At one point, this is a turning point when Daisy sort of like turns her back on Anthony Ramos's character, but he tells her, you got 3 of your friends killed over trying to land a big fat grant for your science project.
Right?
And I thought like, whoa.
That's the one moment of truth in this film to a character.
The score and the soundtrack is doing a lot.
Benjamin Wallfish did the score. Dan Mindell.
I'm not going to say it's bad, but it's just like heavy.
Cinematographer. The score felt way too heavy. It was doing overtime, and again, to make up for all these boring people running around.
Okay, the scene where Kate goes to visit her mom and then Glen Powell shows up because he sprung on her. Maura Tierney is like, I don't know if it's supposed to be funny. Like
it's supposed to be funny.
Like this handsome man is here, make him stay. So she's like, oh, you're staying for dinner. And then he starts rummaging through the farm shed or whatever it's called, the barn, and sees all of, I'm a city guy, Daisy's, all of her science work. Mm-hmm. And that's when he discovers her plan to use polymers to tame tornadoes.
The barn is filled with her research from years past, like to the brim almost. And her mom's like, are you going to do anything with this? And Daisy Edgar-Jones goes, throw it out.
I would have, if that were her mom, I would have slapped the shit out of her.
You like, come throw this out.
This is my house. You go throw this shit out.
But she has her science project from somewhere in high school that is...
Which was cute.
It's cute, but it takes up so much space.
But it's cute. She's built this replica of a town, and then she can generate a tornado somehow. Mm-hmm. They don't show how, which I think probably would have been a better scene in this movie, is to show how she made a tornado in the 7th grade, and then it tears up the little town. Mm-hmm. That was cute.
But through this, he looks at her notebook and discovers that he could be of assistance to her. And then they're tinkering around developing things. And then they release their first set of those little balls. And they're looking at a laptop. And the diagram of the program, that looks the same as when I am using a British recipe and I need to convert from metric.
Yes.
And I just plug in like, how many is one?
Yes, it looked exactly like that when you go, or like, like often I'll be like, how much will my car payment be with 3% interest and 10,000 down? Like that free website that shows you an ad pop up, that's what it looked like. That model that he built for her was laughable. But before that happened, there's a really uncomfortable scene where Daisy gets emotional.
Oh yeah, it's bad.
That was bad.
To be fair towards the performer, I don't know who could have sold that teary monologue.
Again, I think that...
Maybe Amanda Seyfried.
I do like Daisy Edgar-Jones. It's not against her.
She's fine.
Okay, so then after she agreed... Because then she tells Glen Powell, no, we're not using my stuff. But then... So he's like, all right, well then I'm leaving. So then... He gets up the next morning because he spent the night, and he gets in his truck, and then she runs to him in the rain and says, let's do it. And then we cut to a scene where they're out looking at tornadoes and she's taking pictures like a crazy person. And it made me think of that commercial, let your new life begin. Ridiculous. Aside from the opening where the 3 friends get killed, and I already mentioned this, the other good action sequence is now Javi. That's Anthony Ramos's character's name. He is chasing tornadoes again, and so are Glen Powell and Daisy together now. And the tornado hits a power plant. There's a big fire, and that looks cool. And then Anthony Ramos's truck gets flipped on its side. And I thought something that was so ridiculous is they're trying to figure out, like, Daisy's like, should we save him? And Glen Powell's like, no, we got to get out of here. We can come back. And then all of a sudden, a big piece of building hits Anthony Ramos's truck, which causes it to flip back over. That was ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's like those natural disaster movies where they're clearly trying to be over the top. And those are enjoyable because they're ridiculous. But this movie's taking itself a little too seriously to be fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, I think that we might be in the minority camp on this because the early word on the street before we even saw the press screening we did was that it's getting good buzz. Not for me.
Yeah.
I did not enjoy it at all.
Oh my God, the ending where So Daisy has decided to work with Anthony Ramos because he ends up he has, I'm assuming, had taken millions of dollars from this real estate tycoon to develop this startup. And then towards the end, he tells his partner, Henry Cavill, tell John Deere, whatever his name is, that I'm done.
Riggs. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't think it works like that. I think you're in for a serious lawsuit.
Yep.
But now he's decided to work with Daisy Edgar-Jones. So they're at the airport and he's telling her, okay, well, you're going to go to New York and pitch this new technology that we can both work on. Because I have the tech skills and you have the water witch skills, whatever. But then Glen Powell shows up.
What's that song by Pet Shop Boys? I got the brains, you have the looks.
Oh.
Let's make a lot of money.
Glen Powell shows up and he's parked in the airport. So, of course, security's like, you can't park here. And guess who security is? Tall John Shear. Paul Shear. From How Did This Get Made?
A bright spot in this dismal
Which
mess.
was a bright spot.
Yes.
But then he runs to the airport to grab her. And I'm confused. Like, is he like... Because first it's like Barry the bodyguard when Whitney runs out to go embrace Kevin Costner. But then we never realize, like, is he going to go with her or... Because she's going to New York to get her science done. I don't know.
Her flight's delayed and they walk off together. So
like, what are they going to do?
Maybe she stayed. But she tells him, like, you know, maybe you need to chase what you find worth chasing or whatever. And it's like, could we be adults somewhere and just be like, look, I like you. Do you want to work on this? Great.
There's a post-credit scene I forgot. It's her and Glen Powell. I don't remember what that was.
It's about the shirts and her name.
Oh, that she wants a shirt with her name on it. But then there are also like little... not bloopers, but like segments of like what would be deleted scenes through the credits. And I thought one scene encapsulates how I feel about the movie, which is that British reporter who was following Glen Powell. We see that Lisa Bonet is giving...
Sasha Lane.
She gave him a tattoo of a big-ass tornado on his arm. Mm-hmm. And I rolled my eyes like, that's so stupid. And that's how I felt about this movie.
That's exactly... We are forgetting an integral moment at the airport where... Paul Scheer is threatening to tow Glen Powell's truck, and he, to chase his lady love,
bolts his truck into the
concrete. Hell, that's going to cost you a lot of money, sir. That is that's now two stupid rom-com moments involving Glen Powell, including anyone but you.
Where he shows his butt.
No, with Sydney Sweeney, where he has to use that mechanism where they utilize being rescued by the National Guard.
Oh, the helicopter ride, yep. Anyway, we didn't care for this movie. What would you give Twisters?
1.5.
I mean, I did not enjoy watching it.
Nope.
I'm going to give it 2 out of 5.
Ooh.
But yeah,
it's
a no for me.
It's not for me. I don't know.
Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.